Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Lizzie and today we're going to be doing my top 5 favourite ever standalone books. It's a lofty claim to say that something is a favourite ever, but I reckon these ones we can say it. I've deliberately chosen things that I haven't read for the first time in the last sort of year or so. They've all stood the test of time. They've remained a firm favourite for many, many years. So without further ado, let's get to it. They're in no particular order, just my favourite 5. I think I managed to narrow it down. So number 1, we have Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I have been a huge Terry Pratchett fan since I was about 7 or so when I read The Wee Free Men for the first time, and I've read every Pratchett book I can get my hands on, including this iconic collaboration with Neil Gaiman. So Good Omens follows Crowley, one of those, and Aziraphale, who are a demon and an angel who have been on Earth together for 6,000 years, and they've got a sort of reluctant friendship going on, and it's time for the apocalypse, and they've lost the Antichrist. Shenanigans ensue. It's hilarious, it's witty, it's philosophical. It's so good. It's so good. Also, the TV show is amazing and a great adaptation. A little shout out to the TV show. It's one of those books you can't help but laugh out loud to. I remember I read it on my Kindle at first, and I was on a bus and my friend was next to me and she just burst out laughing at one point, and I turned around and she was reading over my shoulder. You know, just reading a little paragraph had her bursting out in laughter. It's such an iconic sort of science fiction fantasy book, and a collaboration between two giants in the genre. It absolutely deserves its place on this list. Number 2 on this list is a booktube favourite. It is, of course, The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book is just so good. It's so good. It's so good. The Song of Achilles follows, as you would guess, Achilles during the Iliad and sort of his life before, from the perspective of Patroclus, who is his sort of lover partner throughout all of this. This book made me feel so many things. So many things. Of all the books in this list, this is probably the one I've read the most times. I often read the physical book or the Kindle book because I have both in case I get stuck and need the Song of Achilles. I also have the audiobook, which I do listen to. I've probably listened to that a few times actually, because I do like to have audiobooks for rereads, because it feels a little bit less like you're sort of taking time that you could be using to read a new book. So I do sometimes listen to the audiobook. It's one of those where every time I read it, something else hits me, something else kind of stands out for me, I get something else from it, which is just absolutely the sign of a great book, in my opinion. It's so beautifully written. It just opened up this whole new genre for me as well. I read it way back in 2014 for the first time, and it was sort of definitely kind of as I was starting to get more into sort of adult fiction and also things like mythology and things. I mean, it's so good. If you haven't read it yet, what are you doing? You need to go read The Song of Achilles. Book number 3 is one, I think probably the least known book on this list. They're all pretty well known, but this is the least known one, and that is A Single Man by Christopher Isherwood. This is I don't know if it's a novel or novella. It's very short. It's like 150 pages or something, and follows George, who is a professor living in the 1960s in California, I believe, and it's a day in his life after the death of his partner. Christopher Isherwood was a sort of trailblazer in writing kind of mainstream queer stories, and this book is it's a perfect example of how to say a lot and write a little. Every single sentence is just so perfectly crafted to pack the biggest punch, to give you the most information or the most emotion, and it's just stunning. It's a stunning book. I have only read this once, which is a crime. I need to read it again, which is why it's here with my TBR books, as I do want to reread it soon. But yes, I would highly recommend A Single Man. It's an amazing, amazing book. Number 4 will surprise literally no one. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I'm going to assume that you know the plot of this book. But in case you don't, then it follows Lizzie Bennet, who is the second of 5 daughters in Regency England, where, you know, you've got to have sons, otherwise no one can inherit anything. And her mother is desperate to get them all married off. She only wants to marry for love. She doesn't want to marry for money or for status or any of those things. Very conveniently, she falls in love with one of the richest men in England. Of course, it's much more complicated than that, because they meet each other and they don't like each other, and then, of course, they get together at the end. We all know this. We know that Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy get together at the end. It's such a good book. It's such a universal book, I feel. It never feels like... I mean, there are some points of the book that are clearly of a time, but it just feels so timeless of a story, as do all of Jane Austen's books, but this one is definitely my favourite. And the last book on this list, it's another booktube favourite, The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is definitely one of my favourite books. As a teenager, I read it so many times, over and over again. My copy is falling apart. And this follows Liesel, who is a young girl who is evacuated in Germany in the Second World War. And the book is narrated by death, which is just such a cool concept. The family that Liesel is sort of taken in by, adopted by, they start hiding a Jewish man in their basement, and he begins to teach Liesel how to read, and they discover the power of stories together, and the relationship that they build is just incredible. And it's just it's a beautiful book. I think a bit like the Song of Achilles, it can sometimes feel like they're a bit overhyped, which is sort of inevitable, you know, if a lot of people love a book, that it can kind of feel overhyped. But I stand by The Book Thief being one of the best books I have ever read. Thank you very much for joining me today for a nice little short video, my top 5 standalone books. I'm going to do another video, sort of part 2 to this one, for my favourite series, so stay tuned for that one. If you liked or didn't like any of the books I mentioned today, or if you want to let me know your top standalone books, then let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!